So hello, my name's Rob, this is Cattle Rabbit Scale Model Studios, and if you've been following with the channel recently, you'll know that I've been painting up parts of this Centaurion Marshal For Warcry. It's a fantastic model, but it's time to make the base, and I wanted to do a very Chaos Waste themed base, which is not something I'm going to say 3 times in a row. I'll leave all the description and details and things like that below, so do check that out for any more information, but without further ado, let's get started. Now the first thing I am going to do is I need to work out where my miniature is going on my base. For things like this, placement is absolutely everything to me, and to ensure that the model gets the best contact points as possible, what I do is I just come in with a little pen and I draw around just roughly so I know what bits to keep flat. This is going to allow me to get a nice, good, firm fix when I come to attach the model later. Then we can start on the base proper. Now, the first thing I'm going to tackle is adding a bit of height and a bit of natural kind of geography. One thing I do want to do as well is just cover this little tiny nipple type thing that is part of the manufacturing process. Most bigger bases have this, some do, some don't. But the way I'm going to do that is ready mixed filler, or to my American friends, it's known as Spackle, I believe. And all I'm going to do is using a Citadel texture tool. This is a fantastic tool. I really use this a hell of a lot. I think it's a really good piece of kit to have in your hobby arsenal, especially when it comes to things like bases. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop bits out and I'm just going to dot them around the base in random places. Don't worry about it looking all nice and smooth. We're going to sort that out in a minute, but just add as much or as little as you want. You can go nuts with it. You can really pile it up, or just give a little bit of subtle kind of, you know, motion, which I'm going to do for this one. I don't want it being too high. I want it to be fairly flat. Now we're here, the next thing to do is I'm just going to get a paintbrush, dip it in some water, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint it over my raised parts of filler, just to smooth everything over so it's got a bit of a natural shape to it. I didn't want rough edges, I wanted nice smooth edges, especially on this. But just go round. I do go back, add a few little bits of filler here and there until I was happy with it, but the nice thing about this is there is a lot of time that allows you to play around. Next up, bits. Here I had an old Stormcast model, so all I did was I just cut it up. There were some bits of some Chaos Knights, I believe, some spikes, which I thought might look quite good, poking out the ground, things like that. And then obviously Chaos Waste skulls. I don't believe there's any part of any Chaos landscape in Warhammer that doesn't have skulls or has had a battle on at some point. So I really wanted to kind of just add little details and things like that. So next up is what I'm going to do is just pop some skulls out. And one of the reasons why I like using filler for stuff like this is you can just push them into it, which makes it look like they've been there for a while, they're buried. All too often I see skulls just propped on top of bases. Sometimes it looks great, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted this to be kind of a bit believable. Another good tip is I get skulls, I file the backs off of them, just so they can sit a little bit deeper into the base, just to give the illusion of, you know, depth. So here I've started to just kind of push everything into my piles of filler. Every time I push something in, I get my wet brush and I just brush it over, you know, this Stormcast armor panel and his spear. And all I'm doing is every time I'm pushing something in, I'm going back with the brush and I'm just blending it into the landscape. As you can see here for the shield, I've just got a pair of clippers. These are fairly blunt, these ones. They do take a bit of a beating, and I'm just ripping chunks out of the shield. And all I'm going to do, same again, I'm going to put it into the filler, push it down nice and deep, and let the filler just kind of wash over it and settle where it needs to. I'm happy with how it looks here, so I think I'm going to go on to the final stage, and that is fixing everything down. Now, what you can do is once everything's kind of dry, you can come in with just a little bit of super glue, just like I'm doing here. And all I do is I just put a little dot just near where the joints are, making sure that it kind of seeps in and it almost like fixes it down in a bit of a nice gloopy mess, if you will. Now that's done, this is where we are. As you can see, I didn't want too much height on mine because the model's got such a great kind of pose. I wanted to keep everything flat, but you know, I've got these spikes sticking up, the skulls, the shield. There's enough on here I think I can work with. But the next step now is to prime everything. I've given mine a blast of black, and what I did do was just give it a light dusting of a brown spray. I'm lucky enough to have some of the original Mournfang brown spray here. This is just going to help with the ground cover. If you don't have a brown, I'd probably recommend just giving it a bit of a wash with Rhinox hide. The next step, and what we need to do before we move on to any other details, is we need to paint all of the bits that are attached to the base. So here you can see that I'm painting up the shield, the Stormcast bits, any skulls, things like that. I will just make sure they are painted fully now, because everything else is going to go on top of it. So this is our last chance to do this. So that's what we look like. With things like basing, it's all about the organization and knowing the steps of what you need to do next. So now we're up to here, we can start moving in with technical paints. For this, I'm going to be using Agrellan Badlands, Agrellan Earth, and Armageddon Dunes. These are great little paints from Games Workshop. Loads of texture, some crackle, some look like they've got little stones in, and all I'm going to do is open all my pots at the same time, and then using I mean this is a knackered old shade brush, I dab and I mix these colours together while they're wet on my base. It creates some really natural kind of colours and just gives a really good effect when it dries, because some bits pull apart, some bits don't. Here you can see it's fully dry, and do you know what, if you wanted to stop now here, you probably could. I am just going to do some extra little bits to kind of spice this up. Just before I move on with the tufts, which you can see that I've added here, if you do get any of your texture paint on things while you're painting them, you can just wipe them off with your finger. Next up, Agrax Earthshade, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of water to this, and where the natural kind of texture paints have settled and clumped together, I'm just going around there and I'm just defining those little bits just to make them stand out a little bit more. As you can see here, you know, little odd bits that have kind of accumulated around the skulls. By making them darker, you're actually drawing your eye to them a little bit more because they've got a bit of an unnatural shading. If you do put on too much, like I put on a little bit too much here, just wash your brush off ever so quickly and just almost stipple it out. But you can have fun with this. You can make it as dark or as light as you want. Come in with other shades. A Phonian camo shade is one that I find works really well. But once it's all dry, I'm going to do a little bit of weathering. Now, once again, this is optional. If you don't have one of these, you could probably just dry brush something like Ushabti Bone over this if you're copying this method. But with these little Tamiya palettes, you get this little tiny brush. It's like a makeup set. It's fantastic. And all I do is I gently just brush it over all of the base. A good little tip here, once the miniature's on, I can actually then just do a little cheeky dry brush of Ushabti Bone or my Tamiya paint, and it will tie everything together to make it look like he's actually there. And then lastly, blood for the blood god. What chaos waste doesn't have blood? Probably water in the plants all over the place. So all I'm going to do is just little dribs and drabs. I don't want to soak it. I don't want to make it look too kind of, you know, puddly and things like that. Just that a battle was fought here, and unfortunately there was someone that maybe didn't do so well. I like to keep a line through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of follow this angle of blood trail that I've done. Maybe someone's been dragged off. Maybe someone took a particularly nasty blow. And all I do is I just keep stippling it, just so it looks like it's a little bit dry. It's been there a little bit while and stayed the sands. But there we go. That's what effectively we are left with. These are great fun to do. I absolutely love doing bases and things like that. And, you know, a lot of people that do follow me know that I'm a bit of a sucker for a diorama. As you can see, I have kept those bits slightly flat, which I will do for my miniature. When I attach it, I'll just touch in some more texture paint just to make him a bit believable. But this is the end effect and what we're left with. And if you're wondering how my fully assembled model looks, then look no further. That is my Centaurion Marshal for Warcry fully completed. If you are interested in seeing more pictures of progress and things like that, please do consider following me on Instagram. Once again, if you did like this video, please do consider giving it a like, a subscribe, or sharing with a friend. Helps me out immensely. Stay tuned for more tips and tricks coming in the future. Normally twice a week. I have videos out, but that's it for this one. Do let me know in the comments below if you like this, and I will see you all next time. God bless and take care.